Hello, and welcome to Pilgrimage in Faith, a Lenten Journey with the First Baptist Church of Medford, Massachusetts. Each week of this pilgrimage, we will reflect on a different aspect of our faith journey, preparing our hearts in this holy season of Lent for the joy and celebration that await us in Easter. But we are not at Easter yet. There are still days to wait, prayers to pray, and miles to walk. This is a time of preparation. Before we welcome our special guest teacher today, I invite you to pray aloud with me the words of Psalm 130. As we do, we will also hear a musical reflection on this ancient and holy prayer. May your pilgrimage in faith this Lent be a blessing to you. And as we walk together, may you find the strength to be a blessing to others. We pray now the words of Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. If you, O Lord, should mark iniquities, Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, so that you may be revered. I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than those who watch for the morning, more than those who watch for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is steadfast love, and with him is great power to redeem. It is he who will redeem Israel from all its iniquities.
In the Sermon on the Mount, people are called to live justly in the world, being salt which preserves and light which illuminates. This means practicing nonviolent resistance to the dark systems of domination and oppression, and practicing love for all people, including enemies. The practice of nonviolent resistance challenges the way of the world, which is the way of redemptive violence and self-will. Of course, this is not easy, since it goes against our natural inclination to protect ourselves when we are challenged. To help us in this, Jesus teaches the 3 acts of justice, which are traditional in Hebrew religion. Or they could be called acts of equality, acts of human partnership, or even acts of love. Our classic translations of the Sermon on the Mount have labeled them as acts of piety. This is misleading. These acts are not simply spiritual practices for our personal benefit. They are acts that affect change not only in ourselves, but also in the world. The 3 acts of justice are giving, prayer, and fasting. Lent should not only be a time of reflection, but also a time of action. The 3 acts of justice embody both action and reflection. Central in Jesus' teaching is that in the acts of justice, we are to seek God's approval, not the approval of the public. They are to center on the needs around us, not our own needs. By centering not on the self, but on others, we are rewarded in that our character is deepened. Acts of giving are acts which seek to establish God's redistributive justice through providing resources for all. Jesus expands on this in his teachings. Give to those who beg, and do not refuse them. Do not expect to be repaid. And also, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. God has given us a bountiful earth which we are to nourish and develop. We are called to build systems where the bounty is shared, so that, as Deuteronomy says, there are no poor among us. What we have built are not systems of justice and mercy, but systems of domination and oppression. Systems which serve the god Mammon, not the Creator God. Systems which have led to great inequality and suffering in the world. But now the good news is, Jesus calls us to do acts of justice and so live by God's system of justice, God's system of equality, God's system of partnership, God's system of love. The second act of justice is prayer. Prayer is not simply asking for things, but prayer is a way of aligning myself with God's creation and salvation intention for a just society. Your commonwealth come, God. Your will be done. Hallowed be thy name could be translated, may the promise of your name, I will be there, be our sacred center. It is the idea that when we act for a just society, God promises to be present to empower us in our action. Forgiveness is the heart of the prayer, because forgiveness is essential for building a just society, since forgiveness is the restoration of trust. Notice how prayer is a private act, not a public act. And yet, when I go into my closet and shut the door, my focus is on the community. Our parent God, give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us. In my mind and heart, I take everybody in the closet with me. What trust in God. For only God knows we are there in the closet together. The last act of justice, fasting, is seldom practiced today except inadvertently by those who do not have enough to eat or drink. During Lent, some Christians give up something, candy, meat, alcohol, or perhaps Facebook. I would like you to read Isaiah 58 today, for it is the definitive passage on fasting. Isaiah sees fasting as a way of focusing our bodies as well as our spirits on loosing the bonds of injustice, undoing the thongs of the yoke, letting the oppressed go free, and breaking every yoke. That is its purpose. And fasting is to be a regular practice like giving and prayer. And like giving and prayer, it is not a public practice. It is not a practice to show how pious you are, but it is an identification with others, especially with those who are vulnerable, those who are hungry in the world. Even in the USA today, the richest country in the world, there are many who are hungry. Fasting helps us feel something of what the poor, especially the hungry, feel, so that we will be committed to sharing our food, our homes, and our wealth with those who are in need. And so that we will be committed to support policies of justice, living wages, health care as a right, and also to support humanitarian action in the world rather than military action. Congress should have held a fast before voting on the pandemic relief bill. This Lenten season is a good time to commit ourselves to the three acts of justice. Use your imagination on how to build a life of giving, a life of prayer, a life of fasting. And from our private experiences of giving, prayer, and fasting, we can come together to loose the bonds of injustice in our communities, in our state and nation, and in the world.